like to call to order the July 19th, 2022 public meeting of the Eagle Arts Commission. Would you please call the roll?
Herzog. Absent. Klosterman. Absent. McFarland.
Present.
Mangentini.
Present.
Where am I? McAllister.
Present.
And Ruxton.
Present.
A quorum is present.
Great, thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 3, approval of the minutes. Action item, minutes from May 17th, 2022. Does anybody have any comments, corrections?
Mr. Chairman, on item 5D, I would like the minutes to reflect that the request was to contact the City of Meridian to determine whether there were any issues with the vendor, as opposed to whether they were used.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments, corrections?
I can mention it. Item 5A, it says Eagle and Pictures Project initial list of sites for photographer. It doesn't mention anything happened there. Was that tabled, or because the subcommittee took care of it? But
it was tabled because you weren't here. We didn't have that info.
Yeah, we tabled that item.
okay.
Yep, so that is a correction.
It was sent out to the members, but
Yeah,
there was
but
no
we
res-
chose
there was no
not to
response.
discuss it.
So the subcommittee handled it.
Okay,
It just doesn't, it should say that it was tabled then.
noted. So we have tabled on 5A and we have 5D in the language, discovery of issues with previous issues with the vendor. Okay, any other comments or corrections?
You want to move?
Okay,
I'll move to approve the minutes from May 17th.
I'll second.
okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Great. Minutes are approved from May 17th, 2022. Moving on to 3B. Action item minutes from June 21st, 2022.
One correction just on the spelling.
Okay.
On item 5A, Corey and Melissa, it's R-E-C-H-E. That was all.
R-E-C-H-E. Okay, so
with
spelling.
actually an accent
With an
on the E,
accent.
but yeah, accent.
Okay,
But yeah.
okay. And that's the only place this is appearing.
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Everything else looked good.
Any other comments or corrections? Okay. We have a motion.
I move approval of the minutes of June 21, 2022 as submitted.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. We are approved on item 3B. Item number 4, public comment. This time is reserved for the public to address the Eagle Arts Commission regarding concerns or comments they would like to provide to the Commission regarding any matter up to and including any subject on the agenda. Out of courtesy for all those who wish to speak, the Commission requests each speaker limit their comments to 3 minutes. We have folks in the audience. Are you here for public comment? No? Anyone else? Anyone online or on the phone, Brian? No? Okay. Seeing no one here, we will move on to item 5, unfinished business. Item A, action item approval of Art Stop Literary Art. So you've all, I hope, received and reviewed the writing samples that have been sent in for each of the stops. I think that if we have any comments about any particular item given to inappropriateness, something we wouldn't want to see on the green belt, that ought to be addressed. And Commissioner Mangentini? Okay.
I was very concerned with these submissions in terms of general public. I felt that there was one submission that I felt was appropriate. And the other submissions, and I appreciate that you talked to the one person, because that was a big-time red flag.
Sure.
But the story in and of itself, contemplating suicide, death in Vietnam with other stories, talking about asexuality, talking about, jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, leaping, tempted to leap. These are all things in all these different stories. And I just am thinking, because it's such a general area, if this was like a poetry reading that we had people come in and read and inspired, and it was adults coming in and listening to that, that makes a lot of sense. But a grandma takes her grandson down to the Greenbelt and they sit down. They're like, oh, there's a story. Let's listen. Grandma, what's asexuality? I don't think that's appropriate. A lot of them were very dark, and I don't understand how that came through with so many of the short stories. Everybody seemed to have somebody dying. One story was about a boy with an alcoholic dad. I just don't understand how that is something we'd want to offer up. And honest to God, I really feel like it would put an awful lot of pressure on our elected officials. I think they'll take a lot of heat. And I hate to say that because we've worked really hard on this, Mark, and you really put a lot into this. And I think it was and we didn't know what we were going to get. But I do have an idea. I mean, I'm not the only decider, but I did want to share my thoughts. I do have an idea we could salvage something, but I don't know. And I'm not going to offer that up if you guys don't want to, entertain anything else. But I think some of the things are very weird. I think people would be like, what in the heck are we doing here? And that's just how I felt. I have very specific notes on each thing. I read them over multiple times. And I felt like, why are we wanting to conjure up this imagery on the Greenbelt?
Okay.
I have some comments.
Yeah, Commissioner
So, I could concur with Commissioner Mangentini. The other thing, the subject matter was somewhat dark, as before mentioned. And some of them I felt were, and it's unfortunate this is an action item and not just a discussion item. Yeah. So, this is the first time that we're actually being able to review these, and which is obviously this work kind of needs to be discussed before voted on. And I think we're going to get into the new business. So, but that being said, I concur with Jennifer, and also some of the length. I don't know if it seems to me if I was going through this Art Stop program, which I think is going to be great, I'm a firm believer in it. It seems like you'd only want to, people are only going to want to spend a few minutes at each site. And so some of them are kind of short, shorter in length. So I think those, I believe, are more fitting for this kind of program, especially to get out the gate with it, where someone can, isn't sitting there like listening to this like long story. And I thought the spirit of these writings were that when you sit in the spot and you look out, and, I guess people could actually conjure these things up in their minds, but I think the average citizen of Eagle, these aren't the images that conjure up in their minds when they sit in that and look off into the river or look at a bridge or at the other site. So I struggled with several of the writings.
Okay. Other comments?
I'm just going to concur. Excuse me. For me, there was a disconnect between the intended purpose, the format, the location, and the material that we received. If it were a different format, if it were written form that was in a book that was taken away, but the art stop, at least in terms of my expectation, I thought there would be a connection between this location and whatever was being presented. And for me, I didn't get that. I think there's one poem for which that connection made sense.
Yeah, that one did, to me too.
So I would offer that I was just a little bit confused.
Meaning that it's not clear that the piece is reflective of that actual physical location in a way that you can discern that that's what it is.
Exactly.
So in other words, that the intention of the writing is to be about place, created about place, as opposed to be created in place.
Yeah, that was my interpretation of the,
Or that there was a.
the stop. I'm sorry.
I'm speaking over you. Go ahead.
Well, I was just, he was asking the question, whether it was something that you just are sitting there and you come up with a story versus this is what I see and this is what it draws into me, which is the way I thought. That's why we have all the different locations, not for different places to people to sit, to write something. But, when you look out, what comes at you, and when this beautiful scenic view that you're seeing, it different times of the year as these things get changed. So it was when I'm sitting here looking off into, into the river or whatever that particular stop is that, what emotions go through me and then those get put into poems and very short stories. I was hoping that someone could sit there and listen in on someone's poetic interpretation of what they took in as they sat there. Mm-hmm. Was that the directive?
So to respond to that a little bit, and of course I don't have the call or the text of any of that in front of me, but I think it's it certainly wasn't directed as an assignment for a writing of place as opposed to a writing in place, which is to say, the assignment is not to make it, nonfiction as opposed to fiction, but it's not a naturalistic, right? A naturalistic survey of the present environment, right? The call language and the intention is to give that artist an opportunity to be in a place that can inspire any number of things, right? And so if being in that place, viewing the river, inspires you to write fiction about someone's a particular person's upbringing, or a meditation about a river, or it's that's, I guess you could say that's the way traditionally, if you've been in writing workshops or writing classes, those kinds of prompts work, right? So I can see how that could be misinterpreted in terms of intention if, like pictures, right? So we send a photographer out to document the natural landscape so that we have that, right? The intention is to preserve landmarks so that artistic vision that artist is bringing something back so that you will always have that literally as it is, right? And their interpretation is a matter of using the skills that they have and the tools that they have available to make that a clear interpretation, right? Mm-hmm. A painter if the call is to capture the landscape, may go out, and if they're an oil painter, you come back and you've got a picture of the river, right? Much that it would look like if you were using that tool to recreate what you see as best you can. That painter also could bring back cubism, right? Or could bring back pop art, or could bring back any number of different interpretations, right? And so to the extent that you haven't said, you are to write a poem about a river, right? What does it say?
It's the call.
Artists are to use this specific location to find inspiration that expresses itself in a literary work with an emphasis on the natural soundings and a sense of specific place. It could be short prose about something seen on the far bank. It could be a poem about the river itself. It could be a song written while on the bench reflecting one of the blah, 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 blah. It could be a fictional conversation that occurred on this bench. Given the nature of literary work, it is somewhat uncomfortable to provide or suggest these overly literal examples. The only true parameter is that what is created is original literary work inspired in some way by the specific place, giving the listener the opportunity to connect with the work by listening to it in the same place.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
You're welcome. I feel like they've
thank
really.
you for
Sure.
providing that. That's helpful. But it is very broad, which is a problem.
And intended to be
And
that.
I think
Unfortunately, with the general broad context
Right.
of the folks that are going to walk along that river,
it cuts both ways,
it's.
right?
I was an English major. I mean, I've read a lot of weird stuff, and there's a context in the right place. And then I'm thinking, well, I don't know if this is suited, and this imagery and stuff.
Yeah,
They didn't realize fully the people that submitted. I mean, they just went their way.
you got more of the latter of that paragraph than you got of the former. Sure. And I think the citizenry of Eagle, I mean, I am not a writer, and I appreciate, what they wrote, but when I marry it to the project, I just can't support the majority of these writings for these stops. I think, I really think the folks that are going to go through these, through the Art Stop program or project, that I think their expectation, I'm going to go out on a limb here, but I think their expectation is, like, I'm looking at this, and then, if I get a story about, Vietnam or whatever, I don't know, I think people are just going to be like, whoa, like, or suicide or some really kind of provocative sort of subject matter.
It'd be very triggering.
I just don't think that's going to be, it's, and of course, all this is subjective, but I just think, I'm just speaking on behalf of what I think the people of Eagle would expect at such stops, and it's the former of the paragraph and not the, the latter part.
Not the latter.
Yeah. But I do, with the call, it is, we threw out a broad net, and we got bit. But, it's not to say that we can't keep trolling.
Yeah. I mean, I would just say that, certainly we don't have it in, I mean, it's a philosophical conversation, right? I mean, and it's one that arts commissions all over the country have had, and arts classes all over the world have had, and, and that is what is art, right? Perhaps it's appropriate that those kinds of intentions are solidified more in the calls, right? Which, of course, were approved in that form. And that, and that, it's fair to say that art isn't something that is intended to make people comfortable and happy. It may be that it's our intention and wish that, that when somebody encounters a work of art for this project or any other, that's what happens. But we don't have a happy section of the library and a gate to the rest of it. That's all made available to the public. In terms of writing, we're seeing more and more all the time that, classic things that we've grown up with that are all part of people's lives, everyone's lives in one way or another, are, being canceled and removed and whitewashed and taken away. And so, if it's the will of the city and if it's the will of this board to move in that direction, then that's certainly what it is. But what I will defend is that, art is not all Care Bear stories and pretty pictures and all of those things. It's intended to be professional, be great in its public, in its public installation, and inspire thinking and conversation.
If I could interject.
Sure.
So I don't disagree with anything you said, but I would say that the other part of art is, sort of know your audience. We're purchasing art for the city of Eagle. And, I think in our last meeting, we talked about the pink tree that's in Boise, right? Mm-hmm. And the installation of that. And that might be great for Boise, but I wouldn't, I would never vote yes on that freaking tree here. I mean, I just would be like, no. Nice, but not for here. So I'm kind of that way with the writings. I'm like, these might cut it in Freak Alley and Boise, but coming down the Greenbelt, I don't want to read about suicide or anything that's, not that it's not art and not that it doesn't have merit. I just don't, like when you come into your own house, and I think we talked about that in our discussion last meeting, is that, so, sometimes you got a great piece of art, you got to find the right place in your house for it.
Sure.
This is our house, and I would say these should not be hung, and where we're planning on hanging these pieces of art, right? So to use that as sort of a metaphor. Okay. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay. So any other discussion? Anybody else have
Want to
any?
hear my idea? Or are we going to?
Sure.
I do have an idea.
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, one thing we do have is a wealth of amazing, classic, historic, and usable literature. And we could actually have voiced over Longfellow, some Thoreau, some, Tennyson. I mean, I wrote down a whole bunch of people. Eliot. There are some very famous river poems. Mm-hmm. It's not controversial. It is art, and it's literary art. And if we started there, at least to get something going, why not introduce it with the master writers? Mm-hmm. And then we could fine tune how we want the, what kind of writing we may want. Down the road. And I love that I thought about the prompt thing, because like with little kids, when you give them a visual prompt and you have them write a story, oh my gosh, I saved some from my kids. They're so hilarious. And it'd be really neat. We've talked a little about trying to get the schools involved somehow. It'd be neat to be able to do that. And if we did something a little different to get it started, you may still be able to have the time to do that. There are also, of course, incredible nature short story writers as well, and Ray Bradbury, Edgar Allan Poe, Nathaniel Hawthorne. I mean, Hemingway, we could pivot and we could try something. That was my idea. That was
Okay.
just something to salvage.
Well, I think that what it's sounding like is that the current writings that have been submitted aren't going to garner support, and so it's probably appropriate to take this to some other forum for more casual discussion and ways to move forward, and we'll do that. But in the spirit of working through the agenda, I think it sounds like we need to have a motion and then
To table this?
to table it.
Yeah, so I move that we table item 5A for further discussion.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'd like to just thank Commissioner for the work he's done on this project. We'll get there. It's going to be really nice. I apologize for my being late. I just got back from Sun Valley for their writers' conference, and I get a chance to see a lot of their artistic things, including the writers' conference. And they're doing an Art Stop project like this, and I'm pretty excited to see. What? Did I hear an oh no over there?
Just wanted to be first is all.
I think ours is first, because theirs was just paper. Remember those pictures I
Right.
sent? They had posters.
Oh, yeah.
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 This is
Hard work. It's going to be nice.
better.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate all of your comments and consideration. And I know it takes
appreciate the
time
work.
to, read it all and think through it. So we'll have further discussion. All right, item number 5B, action item approval of Art Stop signage design. So we took comments from the last meeting and went with green background and narrowed things down a little bit. The four that we took out of it that I think are worthy of consideration here are, I've got them labeled Eagle White and Eagle Yellow. The reason for those labels is those are the City of Eagle branded colors. After seeing the first three, I thought it would be interesting to see what it might look like with the yellow taken out and brought to the front. I understand that this is a design that's going to have to go through design review because it's going to be posted in public. And I think, my personal feeling is that either the Eagles or the pastel are probably better. That I think primary looks a little bit childish and probably is also a little bit intrusive to the natural environment. Not that everything will necessarily be on the green belt, but those are just my thoughts. Does anybody have any comments, questions? Yes, Commissioner Mangentini.
I loved what she did.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool how she turned that feather into a quill and put the A in with, I think that is wonderful. It says it.
Okay.
It just says exactly. It's
Great.
perfect. And I agree with you. I like the pastel one. It's subtle, but yet it has some colors that pop.
Yeah,
A little not so blended.
I think I would agree with that.
I agree.
And just to, echo what I'm hearing when I saw all these, I'm like, well, this is gonna be hard because I really like them all, so.
Yeah.
I actually like the primary one because it does kind of scream, sort of the art with the multiple colors, but I agree, like on the green belt, it's probably a more, blended color with the scenery, so the whites are yellow, probably do win the day. So, I'll be pleased if any of these four are chosen. I could support any of them.
Any other comments? Oh, gosh. Do I have? I'm sorry.
Do you want that long sheet?
No, if you'd just share, I gave them all away to everybody down here.
Oh, yeah.
All the sets that I made. If Jane would want to take them. I just wanted Jane to be able to take a look.
Thank you
if she
very
hadn't
much.
seen it.
Here, you take that one. Thank you. I think I remember I saved, yeah.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'll just say my vote might be for the pastel, but if someone would like to make a motion, or if there's other discussion, or, given the fact that we you know, are without a product at this point, we can also, you know, have further discussion later on this matter.
I have a proposal of sort of doing a straw opinion.
Okay.
So go through each member and which one they prefer and why, and then
Okay.
if that spurs any additional discussion, or if we're all like, yeah, I kind of like that one too, maybe
Okay.
we're all on the same page, and we don't really necessarily have to, I think it might just make
Sure.
deciding on which one we just finally vote for
Okay.
easier.
Commissioner Ruxton, let's start with you.
My preference is the pastel image. Excuse me, I like the additional colors. It is not intrusive in terms of blending into the space, and yet has enough contrast that it will be visible.
Great, thank you. Commissioner McFarland.
I would say, I would agree with that. I would say a pastel as my number one choice. And then I think Eagle White is my second, if we're going to go to the two sheets.
Okay. I agree. 1 and 2, pastel and eagle white. Commissioner Mangentini.
I like pastel. I like the white as well, better than that bright yellow, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Klosterman.
I agree. I like the pastel.
Okay. Well, someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that the commission approves the pastel version of the Eagle Stop signage design.
Second?
I will second that motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Great. We are approved. Okay, item number 5C, action item, Eagle in Glass Community Room Sculpture. Commissioner Mangentini?
Did everybody get the email that I sent them with the message from Melissa and the images of the 3 designs as though they would look on the wall in the new community room?
Yes.
Yep.
I think that I'd personally like to acknowledge all the work that Melissa has put into this. We've been over here many times and taken measurements and photos and meetings, and I know that this has been put together at the last minute, and it was done on behalf of the town, and I think I just kind of guess we're in a situation now where if we can't get the art stop stuff happening, that's more revenue that we won't have spent. And so that may just, I would like to say that in terms of if anybody is feeling concerned about the cost, these are expensive items and this is being custom made. And I think that I think this would be a beautiful thing for us to do, and we have the budget, and that's what our budget's for. And I guess if anybody has any other specific questions with regard to the artwork itself, I would like to invite Melissa to come up and field any questions from you.
Okay, anybody have any questions or comments, either for Jennifer or for Melissa?
Can I just clarify what we're, and maybe you'll be addressing this, we now have 3 proposals, is that correct?
Looks like it, yeah.
All of which are $25,000
Is that correct?
That's right. It's $25,000.
for each of them, whichever choice it is.
Correct.
The last proposal is really the one I'd like you to consider and just ignore the others.
Does anybody have I didn't get that.
It depends on what you choose, but I mean, I'm willing to do any of them. I think the final proposal is the one that works best in the space. I feel like a portrait orientation is the best for that particular wall. The landscape orientation was originally for a larger space, and we tried to make it work in this one, but it really just is kind of a little bit, just doesn't exactly work. Right. It was requested to me that I take it's as large as this, but to take it and put it above the door, clear up in the sky, basically, because it's a tall building. But to me, I don't want the first impression of somebody walking in going, why is that like that? You know, and then it looks like I don't know how to design for a space. So if you want that particular design, I'll be happy to do it. I'll have to shrink it to make it actually work on that wall. But honestly, after having designed several times now for that room, I feel that the final proposal is really the best and works the best for the space, sends the best message. It will have the LED lighting in the back with the way it's got the view from Eagle to the Boise foothills. And then the river there is the Boise River flowing through Eagle. The choice of those colors of trees responds to the lighting. So I will be able to change the seasons. I will be able to have a sunrise and a sunset. And it really makes the piece come to life. And I think that you'll be really proud of that piece. So it's up to you. I'm happy to do any of them or none if you so choose. You don't want any artwork in that room. It's up to you guys. But I think that it would be a great addition, and it would send, I think, people. The purpose of art is for place making, and that's what we're here to do, is create a place where people want to live and people want to visit and people want to come and participate in the community. So, are there any other? Also, there were concerns in the prior meeting about if something went wrong with the artwork. What could we do about that? So my husband and I have decided we will provide a second controller. So if anything ever goes wrong with the controller, you can pop that in. And then a second string of LED lights that you can just replace all of that stuff, and we won't have to worry about any of that.
Cool.
One question. So you're confident that your production time is 9 weeks or less?
I
6
think
to 8.
I can
Yeah.
pull that if I get the go ahead fairly soon, right? But I know you have a deadline of when you have to spend things or whatever. But that doesn't mean that.
Right.
Are we saying I have to have it all totally installed and stuff by that date? I will try as hard as I can to pull that off.
It's just that has less to do with us than it does making sure that we're following city rules and procedure with respect to the budget and so
understand that you
forth.
guys
Because
aren't
what
the
we
final-
can't do is have a project this large that for whatever reason isn't fulfilled and goes over into the next budget year, because it's a double whammy problem at that point, right?
No, and I understand that you guys aren't the final
Yeah.
decision. It still has to be approved by the city council and things
Sure.
like that. So
Thank you.
Okay.
And hopefully, we understand this wasn't a call to art. I think in your letter you mentioned that we didn't have to go through this, that time was saved. And this never was a call to other artists to fill this space. It was, I think this would be considered a commissioned piece of art by the city. And we have to be really careful with those things because we're a public, because it is the city. We have to be sure that no one's going to raise eyebrows at us for not going to the public for a call to art for a room. So there was some of that, this would be, which has been done, commissioned pieces have certainly been done. And by the way, thank you for all the adjustments and work you've made. I think what really got us the other day was that door stopper. You had this place so nicely, and all of a sudden that door stopper was sitting right there, and it's like, for something that's this marvelous, we sure hate to see that door stopper causing the whole thing to be shoved over. So thank you.
yeah. Any other questions?
Questions or comments, discussion?
As was stated previously, I really would like to thank you for the work that you've put into this. It's been tremendous. We've learned a lot, I think, about this particular form of art. I like the portrait orientation. For me, on this particular piece, the moon, where the eye is, for me, it was a distraction. But that was my only comment on that piece.
The cool thing about the moon is that the moon's there, and then you have all of these clouds, and it responds. So when I can make a night scene, I can write a day scene, And that's why I choose to put the moon out. I could take the moon out, but I mean, I like it.
This is the first time I've been having trouble. Sometimes my mail doesn't get to me. I'm going to have to change to another account. But so this is my first time seeing this iteration, which I like this much better than the other Eagle. This is somewhere in between the two pieces.
I've been trying to listen to, the concerns of each person and what they think that they would like for the space. Yeah.
That's a job in itself, right? So
Explain one more time to the imagery. It's you. I had forwarded that email that you had sent, but about the bogus and into Eagle.
Okay, so it's basically the cutout of an eagle head, and this is not an overused imagery within the city so far. Most of the time we have the soaring eagle. I know that there is some tiredness of eagle imagery, but it does happen to be the name of the city, and this is the Eagle Community Center, so I did choose to still go with subtly an eagle by having a cutout silhouette of the head, and then in the hole, so it's cut out. Imagine a box, right? And you cut out a hole of an eagle head, and then behind that hole are panes of glass that represent the Boise foothills and the Eagle or the river running through Eagle. And it responds to LED lighting that is specifically programmed to change with the seasons and day cycle and things like that.
And I'm sorry, and the side of it'll be in a box, and the width of the box is very narrow, I would assume?
It will stick out at the most 8 inches from
Right,
the wall.
I'm talking about the framing of it, if you will. Will it be skinny like that?
No.
Or I won't see the box really, it's because it's on the sides only, sort of like a wrapped canvas? Would it be more like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's just
It'll be deep, I get that.
shadow box. It's a
Yes.
big shadow box is what it
But
is.
sometimes you see the sides of the shadow box, right?
Sure, you'll see the sides of it because it's 8 inches all the way around at
Right.
the most. It'll
Okay,
probably
and
be
then when
closer
I'm
to
looking at
7.
it from the side, is it white, is it black, is it blue?
It'll probably be black
Oh, okay.
on the very side of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so if I came in this door and it was sitting there, I would look in and I would see the relief would be black on the sides.
It's a gloss black cabinet, correct? Or is it a matte black cabinet? Is it?
We don't know yet. It has to be.
I will make that decision once I put it together because, I mean, I might decide to wrap the whole picture all the way around the sides. Okay? Which is more my inclination. It's what I usually do. But
okay.
until I have the whole thing
Yeah.
laid out and all the
That
glass,
would
then,
be my
yeah.
preference, would be something like that.
Commissioner Mancini?
One of the things that was a concern that had been mentioned was those chairs are going to be right under the piece. But see that console table right there? A console table could go there and chairs in front of it. Like we don't have to have chairs sitting right under a piece of art. A table could easily go there, and that would prevent people from getting that close to the wall.
I mean, in the picture, it shows it being at least, I don't know,
I was saying
It's 6 feet above
up.
the.
6 feet above, yeah. So-
Exactly, but like say a 6'3" person for some, sitting in that chair and they stood up and bonked their head or
I'm
something,
6'1", so we got to make sure that.
Right.
At least 6.
Sir Mark doesn't bump his.
I'm not. I'm very stubby.
You're not? Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Let the
well-
minutes,
Other questions or comments? I'll just say that I'm very grateful that you continue to evolve this design and listen to our concerns and comments and feedback. And I think that, although there's been some turbulence in the process, the good news is that we've gotten, all of that has produced something better, right? And, my concerns were addressed in terms of, the orientation and placement in the room. I think it looks great in this configuration on that wall, and the fact that it isn't quite the literal, the high school mascot literal interpretation is pleasing to me, and I think it's gorgeous. And so, thank you for that revision and thoughtfulness in the process of doing
Yes,
it.
ditto.
And that's great.
I
And
agree
thank you,
with
Commissioner
Commissioner.
Mangentini, for continuing to work through the process of all of our
Appreciate your
comments.
working
and-
with us. I think it's
No.
produced a better,
great
a
product.
fully evolved design that we can be comfortable with.
Yeah, I'm
Ready for a motion?
not comfortable. I'm enthusiastic about it now.
Yes,
So that's great.
enthusiastic, right?
Are you calling for a motion, Mark?
So, yeah, with that, if there's no other comments or discussion or questions, a motion?
I'll move to approve item 5C, Eagle and Glass Community Center sculpture.
I will second that motion.
Okay, and Brian, I think we also need to say for the amount of the commission, and then Brian, this needs to be a roll call vote because we're voting to spend money.
In addition to my previous motion, not to exceed $25,000.
Okay,
Seconded?
seconded. Brian, would you call?
Herzog, absent. Klosterman,
Aye.
McFarland,
Aye.
Mangentini,
Aye.
McAllister.
Aye.
Great, motion carries. Very pleased to be seeing this, and great
Thank
luck
you.
getting it
Thank
together.
you very much.
Okay, moving on to item 6, new business. We've been asked to strike item A, the discussion item, and so we'll move on to item B. Action item, appointment of a subcommittee of 2 members to prepare. Oh, wait, no, sorry, we have to strike that one as well. We have to strike all of number 6.
So, can I ask a question?
Commissioner McFarland? Yep.
6A and B. So, I responded to the email in regards to the striking of this item, which basically was some parameters of governance for the commission. We've had several meetings with either newer or even existing commissioners asking sort of the ways of working on how to get something on the agenda, how the agenda is created and managed. I had a whole list of things. There was some questions when something should be, when an idea is brought before the commission, sort of that process of, a discussion item first, if possible, and then on to an action item to follow. And, meetings, length of meetings, if we want to extend a meeting, what would be the process to, approve of an extension of it? Like, we're almost done with the agenda, and we would, but we're going to go over, things like that. We don't really have parameters on that. And I think the email was, it told us, the commissioners, that we were to look at Robert's Rules of Order, which are basic parliamentarian procedures, which is how to make a motion and how to, make an agenda and what's a quorum and things like that. But it doesn't really address those issues that I spoke of. So, and it said that it's unusual or not customary that each commission would have its own bylaws, if you will, or, this is kind of like a process handbook. But is there, if that is the case, is there some kind of bylaws that are generic that all the commissions are using on these types of issues?
Jason Pierce, just so you know. So trying to figure out how to get agenda items on the agenda and how it gets approved. And so I'm trying to understand exactly what you're trying to get at so I can make sure.
So we had an idea that came and was put on the agenda. I think mistakenly it was put on as an action item. And I think the commission was a bit surprised, and we had members on the commission saying, well, what is the process to get something on the agenda, and how does that process go? And if we were to have a call, and we agree that we want to have a call for, like we have the Eagle and photography, like, who writes the call? What's the process? And do I ask staff to write the call, or if it was, the inception of the idea was me as a commissioner, do I write the call? There's just a lot of sort of governance that is not always clear, and we sort of struggle with that at times. And this last one, it's sort of because of the timing, and we had the artist here, and all of this came to, sort of to a head at the last meeting. And it was unfortunate because a lot of people were like, well, we really don't know what the process really is.
I might add to Commissioner McFarland's very quickly, he mentioned, especially new commissioners come in, and I understand Robert's Rules of Order handles procedural issues, but there's some things that have come up. For example, one of our own commissioners brought in a proposal for a theater group and wanted a endowment, and that was the first time we've heard any kind of rules about conflict of interest, like how, and there was a specific guideline for it that none of us have ever seen. And so the larger context of the agenda, conflict of interest, who writes these calls for artists and things, I'm not sure there's a handbook or anything out there, or if you just learn it little by little as you're sitting on the commission. Thank you. Excuse me for interrupting.
Yeah, we'll just let you know when you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a couple things. So there's a lot of other commissions and stuff. So when I'm in charge of one, or I'm a chairman, I usually would send out an email saying, hey, does anybody have anything they want to add to the agenda? Okay, then the agenda goes out. Obviously, usually the chairman is the one that confirms, the agenda and what's on it. And what happens is if you come to a meeting and somebody says, hey, I've been trying to get this on the agenda for the last, 2 meetings and it's not happening. Well, then as a whole, you guys could say, hey, we want this on the agenda. So this happens for me as a mayor. Okay, I set the agenda. I will get things from council members, but if a council member is doing something that I don't think I want on there, I won't put it on the agenda. But what the council can do is the council can then, as a group, say, we want this on the agenda, because the council works as a group. Okay, I work as an individual, and that's kind of how the chairman thing would probably work with you guys too. And that way, because you always get the agenda ahead of time, so you do know what's going to be on there. Now, you were talking a little bit about extending the agenda, so you can't talk about things that aren't.
I'm sorry, just to correct you.
Okay.
I didn't say extending the agenda, extending the meeting, because our parameter is it's a 2-hour meeting, which is only.
I see what
it's
you're
only a parameter because it's actually written on the website for this commission that the meetings will be held once a month and they'll be 2 hours. But we've been calling special meetings to handle these things to get in time for budgets for projects like that. And if you don't have someone there and people say, well, this is a regular meeting and I'm only, obliged to go to the regular meeting, and the special meetings are kind of like, well, I'll make them if I can, which we understand. But, none of this is written down, and we're just trying to build good governance. And you mentioned how you run an agenda. We have no idea. He does not run the agenda that way. He has no direction to run an agenda that way. Items come in and they get sent to staff and they get put on there with your name on it.
There's no approval process.
And there's no approval process to that.
Well, so there's not an approval process. What I'm saying is that stuff would go, like I said, an email could go out. There doesn't have to be an approval. If there's any conversation from.
You're the gatekeeper for the council, right? So
for the council, correct.
So you are approving it.
But it's a little different from me than from a commission. I'm just trying to tell you kind of the general of how it works with that.
So that's where we struggle, is that you're running under that governance.
Right.
We don't have a governance. Right. And so now we're struggling because we would like, I would probably propose that if things come to Mark works with the individual and says, you know what, I don't think this is right for this meeting, or, you know, I think you're right, this is a good time for this. It should be a discussion item and not an action item, because none of the board members have seen this before. And then goes off to staff to be included in that.
So we do almost everything as an action item, and the reason is because if you do come across something and you want to make it and it becomes time sensitive, you can. Just because this is action item doesn't mean you have to do anything.
We understand that.
Right? So it makes sense to put it on there, because what you're doing now is you're informing the public that, hey, you may take action on this item. So they know to come if they want to hear about it or make any comments on it or so on and so forth, or just hear what you guys have to say.
So I believe excuse me, but I believe our challenge is that we are seeking to develop some guidelines and some consistency, and are not clear what the format of that would be in a way that's acceptable to the city.
Okay.
I don't know. For example, in a item coming before council, some items, as I recall, require first and second reading. Well, could we have something similar to that for items that come before the commission? Do we need to have it at 2 meetings? Whatever it is there a mechanism that isn't going to cause a problem, where we could have some general guidelines, not only for this commission, but for future commissions, in terms of what the process is?
Okay. So what I would say is either if you can come together with some ideas and bring them to the city, or if you want to send them individually to the city on what you're thinking, and then we can try to put some process together that would make sense for what you guys are doing here.
And I think
So
that was the
there
intent
isn't-
of the agenda
Yeah, that
item.
was, I mean, we're not trying to like rewrite any
Write
kind
bylaws
of governance manual. Like I was mentioning to, I don't know, one of the commissioners that, you know, I sat on a school board for 6 years, and we sort of ran sort of like, you said, well, this is kind of how it works. And then we decided as a board to sit down and just say, let's get this down so we all know how to, you know, and treat people with respect, all the, you know, mom and apple pie things. And then we had just some things about, you know, if somebody votes on that commission, it was like, if someone votes no, we would like to hear a reason. It was a guideline. It wasn't like you have to say why you said no. But it was just kind of a courtesy to say, you know, I'm voting no on this, and those types of things. And they were all just sort of jotted down into like a 3-page document, and it was nice to have, so we knew that we were following the guidance that we had all sort of agreed to run our meetings with. And actually quite a bit of stuff comes through this commission, and this last one, it was a big one. It was probably one of the most expensive one-item projects we had come up. It came up as an action item. First time any of us had seen it. I think you knew about it because the commissioner had spoken to you. So for the rest of the commission, we were like in shock, and it was put down as an action item. So because no one knew what the sort of
So how does the shock come from an action item? I don't understand. Because
Yeah, I agree. I don't
was being
understand
asked
that either.
to vote on $25,000.
No, you're not. You're-
Well, when it says action item.
You have the option
Yeah,
to.
that just
I
means you have the option.
understand that, but.
So I'm just trying to understand how we get into the kind of minutia of almost like your feeling rather than what's really there. What's really there is you put an action item because if all you guys said, oh my God, this is great, and there's a time crunch, boom, you can do it as an action item. If not, you say, you know what, I need a little more time on this. I think, you know, I'd like to have some so I can, you know, to get some more information. This is the first time I'm hearing about this. Can we table this to the next meeting? Very simple
Right,
type thing. So.
and that's what we did.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's not how all the agendas are written. Sometimes they come in and they say discussion item.
Sure.
And then sometimes they come in and they say action item. They don't always come in with everything just being an action item, with us being, now if this was written in our, you know, in our little code thing, then we would say, okay, we're going to put everything down as an action item, and everyone will understand that that doesn't necessarily mean it's an action item. But since the consistency of our agendas have not been that way, many of them are discussion items, and then they move to action item.
Right.
So,
I think that would be, so once
Again,
again, why
that's-
we do that at the council too is discussion items are usually going to be things that we're not even going to have enough information to make a decision. so we make it a discussion item. If there is enough information to make a decision, you know, the cost, how long it'll take, all those things, then you make it an action item, because why not give the ability to make it if everybody agrees? So that's kind of how, and I don't know, maybe yours doesn't flow that way. A discussion sometimes shows everything, and you could have made a decision, but it wasn't on there. Or,
I'm
I
sure
agree
you
with
get
it.
large packets of information. We do not.
Right.
I mean, I don't believe I had anything. I believe the artist was sitting in the audience, and we had a sample, and
It had every detail on it.
it was mailed
So
out before.
we made
Anyway.
it going a little far afield. I think the question in my mind is, do we have the authority to come up with some guidelines, which obviously have to be approved by the city? Get that. That would be preliminarily agreed upon and approved by the commission, sent to the city for review and comment and approval, and then we could use in the future.
perfect, yep, definitely.
Okay.
It's Cliff's
Thank
notes
you,
on
Ben.
how to be a commissioner on the Eagle Arts Commission, right?
It's
It's
kind of
like,
really what we're kind of looking for.
where's this thing?
So we,
But one thing I would
want the
suggest, and I usually have to do this with all of them, so don't take offense to this, is no one talks until the commissioner gives you the ability to. So you always get, Commissioner, you know, can I, you know, I've got something to say, and, because what happens is you're trying to create a record of stuff people can listen to, and when you all start talking, right, and then the chairman of the thing says, you know, Ms. Ruxton, go ahead, you know, so on and so forth, Commissioner Ruxton or whatever. And that way you don't have the constant talking over each other and all those other things. And the chairman usually, it's a good way to kind of go to keep things moving smoothly.
which would be written in the.
Yeah. Well, that's actually Robert's rules.
That's Robert's
Well, that
rules.
is probably Robert's
That-
rules.
that was
Yes,
that part,
that
but-
is.
So
You are
just-
correct in that.
Just something to help with that part, but then also, like I said, I think all the other things you guys are talking about, great ideas. You know, like I said, send them to us. If you want to do it as a group, that's fine. If you guys, you know, individually want to send things that you're worried about, send that over to us too, and to Brian, and we'll collect them all and get something put together for sure.
So, so I'm not sure, did this item, because we just had a discussion on it, was it struck from the agenda? Or,
Yes, it was struck.
What's that?
oh, this item 5A, we've just discussed this handbook idea at length. And then there was an action item to have a subcommittee go off and sort of put together some items that would be addressed, that we would come back and then have a discussion whether this is stuff that we agree on, how a call would be written, and when is it a call, when is it a commission, you know, those types of things, because we really don't have any parameters for that. And Robert's rules doesn't really
Right, no,
kind of
yeah, it
address
wouldn't.
that.
No. Okay. So, yeah, I would say, if, is the two-member committee is what you're trying to do to draft something for this
So
specific
that
thing
was
we're
the
talking about?
action,
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
at least a two-member committee to go off and at least put some parameters down that we bring back as a discussion item on the next agenda, and see if we all agree. And I think one of them would be that all the commissioners have a unanimous approval of the finished handbook. if you
Well, we
will.
do everything in a majority, not unanimous, so.
I know, but it would be good if we.
So you're gonna try to
You
make
see,
everybody
here in
happy, huh?
America,
Good. You're not running for mayor, right? It ain't gonna work.
Get me going. Mr. Chairman, can I ask for a point of clarification? The items have been removed from the agenda, so do they need to be added to the next agenda?
I think only 6A was removed, right? Was B also?
I don't even know if we got to six,
Well,
6B to be struck.
I think we can agree to go back to item 6A, can we not? Yeah. So I think, and we don't need a motion to do that, I wouldn't think. So if we can agree then to go back to item 6A, the discussion item, creation of a handbook for the Arts Commission. Thank you, Mayor Pierce, and all of the rest of you for having this discussion. And that will inform then moving on to item 6B, action item, appointment of a subcommittee of 2 members to prepare a draft document for commission review and approval. Who would like to volunteer as a member to prepare a draft on a subcommittee of what we've discussed?
I would love to be that
Would you now?
point.
Okay, wonderful. And anyone else?
I also would be very interested in
Commissioner Ruxton?
participating in that.
Okay. Anybody else have any interest? No? Okay.
Excuse me,
I'm
Commissioner McFarland, you're looking for two people, is that what you said? I think two is good, but as long, will we have a chance to have some input and review?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Add some of our things?
And
That's wonderful.
I would
Then it's
say
probably good I do not have too many
that
cooks in the
subcommittee could
kitchen until,
even ask the commission, if you have anything, throw it
okay,
towards the subcommittee.
thank you.
All right, great. Well, it sounds like it's time for a motion.
I move to approve item 6A, the appointment of a subcommittee of 2 members to prepare a draft of the, for the commission to review and later approve. And that would be, I'm sorry, your last, Ruxton and McFarland as that subcommittee. Sorry, I don't even have my glasses on, so. And they're over there, thank you.
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, all in favor, say aye, please.
aye.
And opposed? Okay, great, thank you, and thank you again for the clarification. We'll move on to item 7A, financial report. So I've passed all of you out the financial sheet. You've seen this the most recently at the discussion that we had for the glass sculpture here last week. So there isn't anything new to report here, but I'm happy to take any questions. The gist of it is that it looks like if we don't count on any miscellaneous revenue, so that we've not already collected, and we move forward with projects as we've proposed, that we're going to have funds at $29,000 available. We've just approved $25,000 for the glass, and it sounds like we've got some more work to do on Art Stop. Whether or not that'll happen before the end of the year is in question. So that's the nature of the financials at this point. Are there any questions or conversation? Okay, great. Oh, sorry, Commissioner McFarland.
One, and I think I wasn't able to attend, but if the, I don't know if there's any money or anywhere some funds could be moved, just in case the city would like to have some of the Eagle in pictures reproduced in large format for the new city hall.
Yeah.
building.
So what I would say to you there is that that would be a new project, according to these guidelines that we've been talking about. As far as can that be accomplished in the rest of this year?
It would be for the next. It would be
For the next budget year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the next budget year, the way that works is. We had a budget meeting where we shelled out, ideas of how we would fulfill, each of our budget categories with projects for the next year. That isn't set in stone by us to be agreed upon, right? Obviously, it takes votes throughout the rest of the year.
Sure.
And what's given to the city is the general categories, the revenue the revenue sources that we're asking for, and what we want out of the general fund, and then a budget for administration, a budget for art education, a budget for art installation, a budget for art acquisition, a budget for community events, and a budget for gallery maintenance in general categories that balances against the revenue items that we're asking for. Which is $77,500, I think, next year. Certainly, I think throughout the course of the year, as things change, we're at liberty to, decide to take from different parts of the. Okay. It's our discussion is based on, how to make sure that we have programming that makes sense for those categories and for the amount that we're asking for. And we can adjust that as we see fit, unless I misunderstand.
No.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about the financials? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So in our last meeting, I think I asked Brian if you could go check with the powers that be, that if any money was set aside for any public art for the new annex of the City Hall building, if there was any. There's no funds for art. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Item 7B, commission reports. Anybody have anything they'd like to share?
I want me to? Okay. So the subcommittee on the Eagle in photographs did meet, and that was Commissioner Ruxton and myself. And we met with Don Johnson, the appointed photographer of the project. We had a really good meeting. We discussed the project, and he's very anxious to start and has already supplied some photos to a shared drive that he has set up. And so that's looking really good, and we will be meeting with him throughout the project, making sure that he's capturing the initial punch list that we gave him of, quintessential Eagle locations that we wanted it captured at a minimum. He's a longtime resident, so he knew probably some places that we might not have thought of. And so I think we're going to get some really good content from that. So
great.
That's the report out from Eagle in Photos.
Great. And he's set to have his project completed in time to be funded by the end of the fiscal year.
Yes, we told him about the funding.
Okay. Okay. So then I guess, further to that, I would think the documents internally in the city need to be produced to purchase that, right? And he'll provide an invoice.
I believe that
I think someone from
the agreement, in response to your question, I believe that the contract went to council
Okay. Good.
already in June.
So that's already gone through. Okay, great. Good. Sounds like all the housekeeping's done then. Anyone else with a commission report? No? Okay. Staff reports. Item 7C. Brian, do you have anything?
Nothing to report.
No? And our celebrity guests? No? Okay. I'll just mention, I guess, one other thing, going back to commission report real quick. I've handed out a calendar. I missed that didn't show up on the budget or show up on the agenda, but y'all can take a look at that. And, really the important upcoming item is that we need to have our grant call available at our next general meeting. So if staff would pull that so that we're ahead of the game this year on that. And we are also going to need to, at our next meeting, discuss and, potentially take action on the organization of the Quilt and Fiber Show for Country Christmas. I think there's a few things going on there, including the fact that we may not have the venue available as we have in the past, even though it's been a couple of years since we've done it. That committee currently is Commissioner Herzog and myself, and I'm finding that I'm not going to have the time to serve on that committee, so we're going to need to do next meeting, we're going to find another person to serve on that committee to get that organized. And then we've got a project coming up that's already been designed that I'll be sharing with you for Harvest Festival in October. that we've got a couple of meetings to get through. Other than that, I wanted to note that particularly with respect to the Harvest Festival discussion that will occur next month, obviously that comes from the 22-23 budget year, and so, that's dependent upon council deciding to fund us next year. So there's that item. And then because it will occur before our August meeting, I would encourage all of you to see the Schoolhouse Rock performance that we funded as part of our grant process. In August, you'll see that down there under events. And I think other than that, on an ongoing basis, the artist that we've just approved tonight will be in production, and we don't have action items there. If anyone else can think of anything that needs to be added to this ongoing calendar, I'd invite you to email me or something, and I'll try and keep it up. Otherwise, we're happy to discuss here for the benefit of the folks that are listening at home and everyone that's here. And if not,
One comment.
You do. Okay, go ahead.
I just want to thank you for putting this together. This is something that we've all been sort of really needing for some time. I know this isn't the first iteration, but just another chance to thank you for putting this together, because it really lays it all out and it keeps us organized on making sure like we're ahead of the game and things like that. That's all goodness. So
No, you're welcome. If there is nothing else, then we'll move to item number 8, adjournment, and I'd be happy to hear a motion.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you all for coming this evening. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.